Oh my God, it's so good to be back here on Career Life. And we're super, super excited because today is a special episode. Anna and I will be talking about quiet quitting, that big trend we've all been hearing about, and seeing the difference. What is an alternative to quiet quitting and how can we see change? But let's kick it off by introducing ourselves. Go ahead, Anna.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Ana Goehner, bilingual career strategist. I motivate and empower you to seek change and become your chief career officer. I write about boundaries, mindset, work environment, and job search on LinkedIn. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been here for many years, and I'm tuning in from North Carolina. How about you, Theresa?
I'm Theresa White. I am tuning in from Hawaii. Very, very lucky to be calling this beautiful place home. I guide women in discovering what it is they're meant to do and empower them to find a fulfilling career. I'm a career clarity coach and the founder of Career Bloom. And I'm originally from Germany, if you're wondering where my accent is from, but I've been living in the US for almost 15 years now. And I'm super, super excited to be here with you today, Anna.
Yes, me too.
We'd love for anyone who is joining us, say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're listening in from. We really want to see and also hear from you. This today, we really want to have a discussion, and we encourage you to put in your take on the quiet quitting trend and what you think about what we are saying. So be active in the chat. Woo! Pumped to be here! Yay! It doesn't know your name, but we love to that you are here. So maybe you want to drop your name in the chat so people can connect with you. Thank you for joining us. And yes, please connect with each other. This is also, of course, a networking event. But before we kick it off, we have like lots of things to celebrate today. This is or Anna pointed it out, this is our 10th episode.
Yes, and we're really happy to be here. We're really happy for all the support and the comments and because it just make us so happy and give us that support that we need to keep going. So yeah, we're celebrating also. Teresa's last week she had a 5-day challenge, and we're celebrating the success of that challenge.
Oh, thank
And
you. Yeah, that was a super fun week last week. Thanks to all my challenger who joined me for 5 days of finding career clarity, and then we ended it with a frustrated to fulfilled workshop on Friday. So that was a huge success. And we have one more thing to celebrate. Anna was featured in Time magazine this week. So please drop a huge congratulations for Anna in the chat. That's a huge accomplishment. And not only that, she was also featured in LinkedIn News again. So congratulations. I'm so, so, so excited for you. Well deserved.
thank you, I appreciate that.
All right. Hi, Liz. Thank you for tuning in. Great to see you. All right. So let's get started on our topic for today. We're going to talk about quiet quitting. So I've been doing some research on trying to find the definitions that we can start off with. And really, the quiet quitting trend that started on TikTok has no real definition. So everyone understands something a little bit different under the quiet quitting trend, and has a lot of different trends and opinions around it. But overall, it is employees embracing the idea of no longer going above and beyond at work. So they're checked out at work and reducing their enthusiasm and sticking to the absolute bare minimum expectation of their role. Currently, there are millions of people quietly quitting. There's a research done by Gallup, and it says that it's more than 50% of the US workforce who've quietly quit. And if we just think about that for a moment, more than 50% of the US are checked out at work, sticking to the bare minimum. That implication for obviously businesses of losing productivity, but at the same time also for individuals who are sitting at their desk for 40 hours or however many hours a week of just sticking to the minimum, not being enthusiastic, just doing the bare minimum. That's something that is like very significant, more than 50% of the US. Um, but I'd love to hear from all of you. And obviously, there's a lot of different opinions. If you're here listening in, please drop in the chat and let us know what comes to mind for you when you hear the phrase quiet quitting. And I'm going to turn it off to Anna, and maybe you want to share a little bit of what your take on the quiet quitting is. And I know we have similar thoughts here.
Sure, sure. So I just wanted to say for everyone, tuning in now, the only way we know that you're here is if we drop a hello, hi, tell us where you're tuning in. And, you can even like network in the comments. Feel free to say hello to us. We're more than happy. We always reply to all the comments. So say hello to us so we know you're here. So we don't really like the word sentence, quiet quitting, because it makes you feel powerless, right? That you're not in control, like you're passively, your role, it's a passive role. You're just kind of letting like life pass you by, right? So I don't personally like, because I think it has like a negative connotation, like the whole quiet quitting. This is a picture that I want to give you that it comes to my brain. It's someone sitting in a cubicle or in a corner somewhere with their head down, just doing like the bare minimum, and that's it, right? Like disengaged, not, not thinking about, learning opportunities and all these different things. So, and I understand, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my take on the hustle culture here, because it's always about expectations, like more performance, always more, always on. And I usually like to talk about the word like busyness, because it goes along with the hustle culture, like the culture that always expects, you to go above and beyond, always above and beyond. You're already working at 150%, and you're getting paid at 100%, but you need to keep going, you need to keep working more, right? So how do you find that balance between your performance and desire to grow with the company expectations? And this is something that we're going to touch base a little bit here. So we as humans, we are here to evolve, change, and grow, not to stay put and stagnant, right? So one thing that I want to say here, like sometimes for me, the whole like thinking about a work environment where I want to work, you all start with a job description. And I personally, I look at job descriptions every single day based on what I do. And sometimes you see the laundry list with 30 different tasks, or you're going to see the bare minimum, like 5 different tasks. That a job description is like the minimum things that you might be doing on a job, or the core things that you're going to be doing on a job. But it's not going to be, you likely are going to be doing more than just what you see in the job description. And sometimes you do more because you want to take on a new project, because you want to grow. Like I remember I took on employee communications, and I used to write those like almost every day, and honestly improve my communication skills, as a writer. So it's something that I thought it was in alignment with my skills. It wasn't a part of my job description, but it was something that I wanted to develop. So I feel like this whole idea of quiet quitting, only doing the bare minimum and what you're getting paid. And I understand the idea of going against the hustle culture, because I don't believe you should be giving 150%, waiting 5 years to get a promotion when you're already giving so much and you don't see any sort of change, right? But I also think of, as an employee, if I am working somewhere and I just I'm just doing the bare minimum, it's like, how am I learning and growing? Right. So this is some of the things that I want to bring to start the conversation. So I have a question for everybody tuning in here. Drop a yes in the chat if you agree that life is too short to quiet, quit, and watch from the sidelines. And it's something that we're going to touch base here, because we understand the hustle culture that always wants you to go above and beyond. But at the same time, how are you thinking about your growth as a professional? Right. So take over, Theresa.
Thank you, Anna. I think you hit on a really important point, because right now that quiet quitting trend is positioned as the opposite to the hustle culture. So we're made to believe like either you're part of that hustle culture, that busyness Anna was talking about, or you quietly quit. But what we're here to share is, aren't there alternatives to that? Is really the only response to the not keeping up with the hustle culture, is really the only response that we can come up with quiet quitting and passively sitting in the corner and doing the bare minimum? Or are there alternative ways that make you feel in charge and powerful while not sacrificing your well-being and your health and going with that crazy busyness that we so often hear about? So that is really what our conversation today is going to be about. How can we find other ways to respond to that busyness, that hustle culture? But before we go into these alternative solutions, I want to share a little bit about my story, because I've quietly quit. I'll be completely honest, that's exactly what I've done. Why? Because my career was not in alignment with what I wanted to do. And hi, Marisa, thanks for tuning in. I want to give a quick shout out before I start telling here. We have Liz here, we have Melissa here, we have Marissa. Oh, all the names are similar. Thanks so much for everyone for being here and letting us know that you are here listening in to us. So back to my story. So as I said, I've quietly quit. It's nothing I'm particularly proud of, but at that time, it was just what I did because my career was not in alignment who I was. And there were different reasons. One, I was in HR and recruiting. And while I was really successful and my career looked successful on paper, deep down I felt unhappy and unfulfilled, and it was not what I was meant to do. But I was still very driven and I was a high achiever. We were required to work 50 hours a week and it was insanely busy. And I'm from Germany, so I'm like super efficient. So if I have to work 50 hours a week, I'm going to work at 100% or more than that, 50 hours a week. So I was like extremely stressed. And as a recruiter, it was a sales-based or a commission-based recruiting position I was in. And I had a target that I needed to hire a certain amount of employees every month. And that's what my payment plan was based on. So just to give you an example, so the payment plan target is hire 10 employees every month. And if you hire 10 employee every month, you're going to make a certain amount of money annually. If you hire more, you get more. If you hire less, you get paid less. Well, with my German efficiency, I didn't hire 10 employees over a month. I hired over 21 every month. So that obviously was like for me, that was a big incentive to keep going, and I brought great employees on board, and I really enjoyed that part. But at the end of the year, instead of getting a thank you for the hard work I put in, for going above and beyond, for really busting my ass all year long, I did not get recognized for that. There was no thank you. I didn't feel valued. All I get was a pay cut because I made too much money. And it wasn't, I said that before, it wasn't so much about the money for me, but that lack of recognition, not feeling valued, was what made me say, like, I'm not gonna go above and beyond anymore. And that's when I quit in my head. I still stuck with the position for almost another year, but I really quit in my head. And I was like, if you don't value the work I do, if you don't value what I do, I will quietly sit here. I'll still hire more than 10 employees a month. I probably still hired at least 15, but I was not going above and beyond. I was not enthusiastic anymore. I was not excited about the position. I had quietly quit. That's exactly what I did. But the truth is, that whole year I did that, I was miserable. I felt stuck. I was so frustrated. I was so unhappy. I didn't enjoy my work. I had no idea what I wanted to do next. I just knew I didn't want to be here, but I didn't want to know what was next for me. How can I get out of that career? What could I do instead? I was lost. I was stuck, and I was really unhappy. And at one point, I just couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't keep going with that quiet quitting and just literally wasting 50 hours a week sitting in a job that I didn't want to do, that I didn't want to be at. Like, that is wasting so much time of your life. And that was really the point where I was like, okay, I need to make a change. I need to figure out what do I want to do, and then get out of this position that I'd already quietly quit, and find something that makes me come alive, that makes me light up, that you really enjoying doing, that makes me feel fulfilled. And now that I have that, I feel alive again. Like, this is just such a night and day. So that story is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because I know that quiet quitting is not what's going to make most of us happy. It's really sitting on the sidelines, watching life pass you by, being very passive, and most of the time very unhappy and unfulfilled, when at the same time you could really dig deep and find what do you want to do and get to a career that lights you up, that allows you to use your strengths and your skills, and that fills your bucket. I'm not saying you have to be part of the hustle culture, but while you're at work, instead of being passively on the sidelines, be in a position that you really enjoy and that you want to contribute, and that fills your battery instead of drains you so much. So that is where my passion for this topic comes from. And as I already said, today we want to really talk about what are other alternatives that we can look into instead of quietly quitting. Also, for me, looking back, what could I have done instead of wasting all this time, this whole year? What would have been other solutions to the situation? And we're going to talk about 4 topics today. Anna is going to start by talking about setting boundaries. Then I'm going to talk about how can you figure out what you really want to do and find a fulfilling career. Anna's going to talk about the healthy work environment. How can we find the right work environment for us? And then last but not least, we'll talk about what does it mean being in charge of your career versus just a passive bystander. All right, Anna, you can kick it off with or let's actually, oh my God, I love seeing this comment here. Marisa saying, this is giving me life. I can totally relate 100% with what you're saying. I'm also recruiting in a sales-paid commission-based structure. Yes, we're in the same boat. Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate your input. And again, if you guys have any questions, anything you want to add to the discussion, please drop it into the chat. We love to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's talk about boundaries. Thank you so much, Theresa, for sharing your story. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate, because we're not here, we're not advocating for the hustle culture by any means, but we're also not advocating for you to give up on your career, right? That's not the point. And just kind of get your head down and do like the bare minimum. It's like, and something that just came to my mind, it's a little bit off topic here. I feel like when companies invest in their people, when managers invest in their people too, and it's just like people don't necessarily quiet quit because they know there's a path for them, right? Like, okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, you're likely going to get a promotion, or you are in a path, and you are in a path of growth. I think what I see that happens a lot is like when you are already working, as I said, 150%, and you're getting paid for 100%, and there's always that idea of you need to give more, and you're not making the money that you're supposed to be making. And I think this is why there's this whole trend of whatever you call it going on. But let's go back. I just wanted to mention that because it really came to mind right now, and it's something that I thought about it, and I know people feel this way. People see that all their efforts, everything they put into, their jobs, they are trying to learn, they are trying to grow, but they don't see anything. Like Theresa said in her own experience, there's not a thank you. Instead, there's a pay cut. Yeah. So I feel like this is why people are saying enough is enough. But what we're talking about here is like, don't be that person. Maybe you need a new job, maybe you need a new work environment, maybe you need a new career, but don't be that person that kind of gives up on that side of you, because at least in the US, all of us are going to have to work at least, many of us, more than 40 years, right? To be able to retire. So you don't want to spend years and years of your life doing the bare minimum just to kind of, and the other thing about doing the bare minimum is you don't want to be a part of an unexpected layoff.
Yeah.
right? Because you're just doing the bare minimum, you're not in a job that doesn't serve you. So it's something to keep in mind too, because in the US you are at will employment. Most work agreements are at will, which means they can terminate you at any time. So when you're not, because when you are doing work that you love and you are working for a company that values you, you feel good about going above and beyond. And Teresa and I, we both have the achiever in our strengths. That's one of our top 5 strengths.
Yeah.
So when we feel good about the work, we want to go above and beyond, right? And because we want to succeed, we want to learn, we want to perform. This is important to us. And I feel like it's important for many people in the workforce. So let's go back to boundaries now, because I just had to say those things, because I really like your story is really moving. And it relates to Marissa, and I know it relates to many other people. So how can we set boundaries as an alternative to quiet quitting? Because when you set boundaries, you are in an active role. You are in control, right? So boundaries are hard conversations, no matter the situation. And, based on what I'm going to say here, I will never say go ahead and set like this big boundary. You used to work 80 hours a week, and next thing you know, you're only working 40, and you don't communicate, you don't say anything to your manager, to your team. That's going to be clear that something is up. So what I always say is have the conversation. Maybe you start small, maybe you don't want to say, certain things, or even like, I don't know, like rehearse the conversation. Try to figure it out, because I can give you 1 million ways to start a conversation, but I don't know your relationship with your manager, right? So that is one of the most important relationships you have in the workforce, the relationship with your manager. And how you can maybe start that conversation. So try to figure it out, the right words to explain your situation. So we have a hard time setting boundaries because we want people to like us. We want to fit in. We don't want to be the person who, it's never doing anything with the group. We want to be a part of it, right? But sometimes what the group is doing, what the colleagues, and people are doing in the work environment, in the workplace, doesn't suit you, right? If going on happy hour every Friday, gets in the way of you maybe taking your kids to a soccer game, for example, that doesn't work for you, but it doesn't mean you're not a part of the team. It just means that you have different priorities. You're not going to be hanging out 3 hours after the work ends. You just have other things to do, right? So we want to play an active role when it comes to setting boundaries, and start with clear communication, like I said, with your manager. And sometimes it's also clear communication with your colleagues if you need to talk to a colleague about, a new boundary that you're setting for yourself. So a couple of things that I want to say here, like, for example, the workload. If you're taking the job of other people, you're doing the job of 2 people, or the workload just increased, it might be time that you have this conversation with your manager, maybe during a one-on-one. What's a priority? Like priority, it's usually a one thing, but we add like 20 different things as a priority in our to-do lists. But sometimes, what are the 3 things that I need to do today? What are the top things that I need to get done today? And then everything else I'll do, whenever. Another thing that I used to do is block my calendar. Like I would block an hour or 2, sometimes an hour in the morning, sometimes an hour in the afternoon, to get work done, because otherwise I wouldn't get anything done. So about off hours communication, let your manager know if you can't be on your phone after 7 p.m. because you have a family or you have other things that you want to work on, right? So turn off your email notifications after hours if you have your emails on your phone. Shut down, your team communication like Slack or Teams, just because when you put away, people still send you messages. So you want to make sure it's offline so people are not sending you messages. Take lunch breaks. I know this is a hard one for a lot of us. I used to be a hard one for me, but I learned my way that taking a 30-minute break for myself, maybe more if I need more, and staying, going away from my desk. Even as a remote worker, I still do this. I eat at my kitchen table every day because I need to take that break. I need to be away from my work environment, right? Take maybe 10-minute breaks, every 1 to 2 hours and just open your front door or just go outside, walk your dog, just kind of get into like a different mindset that is not just like work related. um, I would say something that I've done. I would only advise you to do this if you have a conversation with your manager and if they're okay doing that. You can write your core hours in your email signature after you have this conversation, if it's okay. My workplace used to have core hours from 8 to 4. Those were our core hours. Everybody would be online during those times. If you don't have that, it's okay. Maybe that's not something that you want to implement. But I used to have those in my email signature because I used to work with people from all over the world. So I wanted people to know that during those times, those were the times that I would be available to look at emails or, reply to them or do something along those lines. So these are just some ideas that I have. You may need to communicate your boundary more than once, sometimes a couple of times until people really get it, because people are going to try to, get away with things or just like, work around your boundary, but you may need to communicate that more than once. So if you're trying to improve the situation and nothing changes after a while, then it may be the time to think, do I need a better work environment? Do I need a new career? Do I need to figure out what I'm meant to do? Do I need a new job? That's when I think, it's okay to quit, because you're betting on yourself. Like, you deserve a better work environment, a better job, a better career. You're not quitting on the career, or maybe you want a new career. Maybe you want to do something else, but you are seeking new opportunities to thrive. So my take on the whole quitting is, use that each. I wrote today in my post, use that each. If you have that each, I don't, I feel like I'm just doing the bare minimum. I don't like this place anymore. I don't think I like this job, but I feel like I'm meant to do something else. That is telling you something. That is telling you that maybe, it might be time for you to move on, to go somewhere else. So these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about regarding boundaries. So we have a question for everyone now. So, what are your challenges with setting boundaries? Like, why is so hard sometimes for you to set those boundaries? We would like to hear from you. Take over, Theresa.
Great talking points, Anna. And setting boundaries is something I've definitely struggled with in the past too. So I want people to like me, and I think that's human that a lot of people relate to. And how can we be like, okay, I really want to do my job well, but there's a certain boundary that is crossing into my personal life. I remember one time at work, my manager tried to schedule a meeting at 7 p.m., and that was the night I had tango dance practice. And it was a big deal for me to say no, but I did it anyway. I was like, no, this is like, I finish work at 6, I get my work done, I cannot come back for a meeting at 7. I do have personal obligations after that time. And that was a hard boundary for me that I also communicated, but it was not easy. So let us know, what is your take on setting boundaries, and is that something that comes easy to you, or if not, when is it challenging for you to set a boundary? And I think that was a really insightful what you shared, Anna, of using the ability to set boundary as an alternative to quietly quit. Set that boundary for yourself instead of checking out. And I absolutely love not just what you said today, but that is also what Anna's article was featured, that was featured in the Times, is about, or where she was interviewed. And you can definitely check out Anna's posts. I think yesterday was, or 2 days ago.
Yeah,
2 days
it
ago.
was. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so check out her post from 2 days ago if you have not read the article yet, because that dives deeper into how can we set boundaries as an alternative to quietly quitting. What I want to share is with you, and that is what was got me out of that spot I was in. Because a lot of things in my career were not aligned with what I was meant to do. Like, absolutely not. I was in a career that was not for me. But I had no idea what was for me. And that process of figuring out what I really wanted to do is what got me out of that place where I had quietly quit. And I see that a lot with clients as well, that they're in careers that just don't align with who they are. There's just such a misalignment, and that can be a misalignment of company culture. It can be a misalignment of the tasks you're expected to do, that they don't light you up, they don't energize you. That can be a misalignment of your values and your motivations. It can be a value of interest that is just incredibly boring what you're working on. So if there's a misalignment, that can lead to you being checked out and not enthusiastic and quietly quit. But what would be an alternative is figuring out, okay, so I don't enjoy what I'm doing right now, but what would I really enjoy? Where would I really enjoy spending 40 or however many hours a week? What is that? And I'll share my screen here. These topics are going to look very familiar for anyone who joined my Career Clarity Challenge last week, because those were really the topics we were diving into. Or for any of my clients, they see that a lot as well. But those are the topics that you need to get clarity on in order to figure out what you really want to do with your career. First, you need to be crystal clear. What are your strengths? What do you naturally do really well? What makes you unique? What are the things that others compliment you on, and you do them so naturally that you don't even notice that you do them so well? What are those things? Then number two, your transferable skills. What's And when I talk about skills, we have a separate live episode on that. When we talk about skills, we put them into two buckets. What are skills that drain you? You do them for the majority of the day and your battery feels empty. You're just exhausted and drained. Be very clear on what are these skills and look for a career that does not involve those skills. On the other hand, what are the skills that energize you, that fill your battery? You're not just good at them, but you're like, time flies when you start using them. Identify these skills and then find a career that really lets you, like, really lets you use those skills. And then interests. What do you really like to spend your time on? Because if you work on something really boring, like, and one thing that just comes to mind, I had a conversation with someone recently about it. They were really bored by talking about insurance contracts. And if your work revolves around working on insurance contracts, but you think that's one of the most boring things in the world, you're not going to be excited to go to work every day. If it's boring, there are more interesting things out there. So maybe the work you actually do would be exciting, but the industry you're in is not the right one for you. So then figure out what would spark your interest. What would you like to talk about with your colleagues? What are the subjects that you're really interested in? And find work that aligns with them. Number 4 is always one of my favorite. What is your spark? What are the things that make you come alive? And Anna and I've talked about that in a separate episode before too. But yeah, for me, it is solving problems. Like, that just lights me up. And it's like figuring out process. So when I do it in my work, it's like figuring out what my clients are meant to do. That is like what sets me on fire. And for Anna, it is inspiring others. And right, I don't know, you can say a sentence about it yourself.
Share information that inspires others to, motivate, inspire others to seek change and do something different.
Yes. So yeah, I can see Anna light up whenever she spreads her knowledge or illuminates others. And it's beautiful to see how, when you get to do that, how people come alive. And I see that with my clients. Like, once we figure out what it is that makes they come alive, they just light up. Like, you see it instantly. So yes. And number 5, values and motivations. What motivates you to do your best work? So be very clear on your values. What is important to you? What do you value in a career? And then what motivates you to do your best work? For some of it, it might be remote work. Like, one of your values is the freedom and flexibility to work when and where you do your best work. And if you have that in your career, you're going to be motivated to do your best work. For others, that might be really good health insurance, or it might be benefits, or it might be a company car, or it might be tuition reimbursement, or it might be a very inclusive work environment. There are so many different things that we all have different values, but being clear about what it is that we need and then finding something that's in alignment is super important. And the last one, and Anna's going to talk more about that, so I'll not dive too deeply into that, but working conditions. What conditions physically do you need around you to thrive in? What is it that you physically need? Do you work really well in a busy office, or do you need a quiet workspace? Does a long commute drain you? Maybe you love your job, but that hour commute is so draining for you. So, what are the physical environments that you need to do your best work? And then, when you can answer all these 6 points, and then find a career that aligns with what you really, with who you are, that is going to be a career that makes you come alive, and you won't waste 40 plus hours a week quietly quitting and sitting in a corner doing the bare minimum. And I really believe it's so much better to go through this discovery process, get to know yourself, and find what you want to do instead of giving up on your career. And I wish I would have done that. Not a year after I quietly quit, but on day one when I realized this is not where I want to be. So I'm going to stop the screen share here, and we have a question, and a great question. What if you need to get out of your job and you can feel tenseness with your manager? This manager is the best one I've had and really wants me to do well, but there's definitely tension. That comes back to clearly commuting the boundaries. Do you want to go first, or should I go first, Anna?
That's a tough one because sometimes, yeah, it's hard to have those conversations, especially when you sense that there's some, you know. But I'm curious here, like, you want to get out, but like, do you already have an idea of what you want to do next? What are you afraid of? Meaning, is it the fact that you're going to have that conversation about giving your 2 weeks notice whenever you find a new job? Or is the fact that you are afraid of setting boundaries because you are overworked? There's a lot of different things happening in the background that you don't agree, or you're doing way more than you were hired to do. So that's kind of where I would start, um, because I understand when the relationship is not a great one, it can be tough to have this kind of boundary conversations. But if you want to get out, that is already telling me 1 million different things. Like, that's already telling me that one day you're just gonna have to have the conversation and put in your 2 weeks notice, and I'm going somewhere else, So what do you think about it, Theresa?
Yeah, again, there's a lot. A lot of questions here. So, okay, let's pull up. Thank you so much for providing a little more background. I don't have an idea of what to do next. I'm afraid of not setting boundaries because I'm not a top producer and I don't really feel the respect. You have the right to set boundaries. We often sell ourselves so short and we feel like we don't do enough, and that's why I can't set a boundary. I 100% believe that you are doing the best you can, and you have every right to set a boundary. But not having the idea of what to do next is where would need to start. That is like where my clients come to me generally. It's like, I don't know what to do next. And that's really a discovery process, really diving into the 6 aspects that I just shared and figuring out, what do you really want to do? What career is in alignment with what you want to do? And during that discovery process, if you're in a career that is still okay, maybe you've quietly quit, you're not excited about it, but you can keep going, that's what my clients usually do. You keep going in your career till you really did the inner work and find out what, and that we're talking about a month here. So this is not like years worth of work. You can really get you these answers in 3 weeks. And then, oh yes, I absolutely love the book. What color is my parachute? Where I'm doing things similar to the 6 points. Yes. That's a great book. And then once you have clarity on like, okay, this is exactly like, you need to have a very clear idea of where you want to go. This is the next career step for me. I'm crystal clear on that. And then you can like start the job search and make that happen. But unless you're crystal clear, I would, if it's something that's doable, try to have a okay relationship with the manager. Set boundaries where you need those boundaries, but keep that relationship a positive one if at all possible. I do have also a lot of clients who waited to a point where they're just hit a wall and they can't keep going another day, and I've seen them have where they actually go out on leave for mental health reasons because they just are physically unable to go another day. I highly recommend not keep going in that position if you already know it's gonna make me sick. Like, this is not what I can keep doing for in the long run. Better start early, figuring out what your next step is gonna be, and then in the meantime, keep the most positive work environment that you can possibly do, even that is hard, and try to keep that relationship as positive as it can possibly. Oh my God, I'm so sorry that you're here, Marisa. I'd be happy to talk with you, like also after that live, to support you in this, because I know this is a super tough spot to be in. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we're here to support you.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And if you can, because of course, each person is different, we don't know the whole situation. Work on your mindset, meaning try to work on yourself, like on your mental, peace, on your mental health. And like Theresa said, try to keep as positive as possible. If you need to go on leave, for that reason, don't be afraid, and take, if you have the right, and then you can, because I'm going into HR pieces here. If you need to do that, maybe that might be an alternative for you, but try to find ways to not let work take over your life, because when you get into that breaking point, anything becomes a trigger, and we're not therapists by any means, and we're not, mental health care professionals by any means, but working on your own mindset is going to be key for you to keep going, and try to find a different job. Because one thing that I want to share here, when you go from job to job and you are exhausted and you don't know what you want to do next, you may end up in another job that is similar, has other triggers, that is going to just like in 2 months you're done, right? Can talk about from experience. So, and I'm sure Theresa too. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And
Send me a DM, Marisa. We'll set something up to
yeah,
chat.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I already have her in my network, so we're here for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me
And
quickly talk about the work environment. We are going to touch base on this next week, but I just wanted to, quickly talk about it right now. So how can you find the right work environment as an alternative to quiet quitting, right? So work environment is physical, the company culture and working conditions. So physical would be remote work, hybrid work, on-site work, open office, even like sometimes the temperature of the room, right? Because yeah, there's that too. Most offices I ever, I worked on, they were really cold. So there's all these different things, right? So there is the culture, like the values, the mission, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, a learning organization, anything that encompasses the company culture. And there's also the working conditions, right? How's the work and life balance? What are the expectations for the role? I know many people in accounting and finance that work, 12-hour days sometimes, if not more, So do they promote a healthy lifestyle? What is the safety? And when I talk about safety, I'm talking about psychological and physical safety, right? What are the work hours? Do you work, evening shifts? Do you work, first, second shift? It's just like, are those hours working for you? How about deadlines? Is it a deadline driven work environment? Because that means you may be working crazy hours too, because you may need to meet those deadlines, right? So for me, selecting a work environment starts with company research, just learning more about the company, reading those reviews, maybe even reaching out to, employees, and also looking at the job description, as I mentioned earlier. Do you see any red flags? Is there anything else? Is there anything? I came across the job description the other day that I was just like, it was like a book. First of all, it was huge, and it had all sorts of trigger words for me, like fast-paced environment. It was a laundry list of tasks, dynamic work environment, deadline driven, competing deadlines, any kind of word that kind of triggers you, that oh, I have a sense of what this work environment may look like. It's just something for you to reflect on. It's like, is this a kind of job that I want to do? Or because sometimes they might have some words there, it may be just kind of just because, but you want to learn more to make sure that you're not falling for a job that you have to work 12-hour days. So how can you be successful in your career without sacrificing your mental health and well-being? So find work that you enjoy, and that's the exact thing that Teresa was talking about. But sometimes you have to go through that process first, right? So what you can do in the meanwhile is try to set boundaries, having those conversations, and try to continue to build a relationship, even though it may not be a good relationship anymore. Or you take a leave, or if you can afford, which the majority of the people can't, and we know that, you just leave the job, maybe take a bridge job. Bridge job is a job when you are in between, when you're trying to figure out what you want to do next. Or and it's just, you just take any job just to pay your bills and get some health insurance. So and these are the things that, think of things that you can do outside of work that bring you joy, like anything. Even if for you is, I don't know, just go walk outside, or do anything just to kind of try to get your mind away from work. So this whole idea of being available 24/7 and leaving for work, people want to thrive and grow. They what they don't want is to like get a job, and next thing you know, in the third month you're working 60 plus hours per week, right? So I think that's why we're seeing this trend going on. So how can you find the right work environment that gives you the freedom and it helps you thrive? So like I said before, maybe job description, research the company, interview questions. And we're not going to dive on this now, but there are ways that you can ask certain questions in the interview to get answers that relate to the work environment. If the work environment, or even boundaries, communications, and things like that, work hours are important things for you, there are questions that you can ask. And talk to people inside the company, inside the department, read reviews. You know, something that I've done one time was, we used to work on site. Every job I had, I had some aspect of remote, but mostly was on site. I asked to see the office, to take a peek, and just kind of, because I wanted to see if it was going to be an open office again, because that wasn't the right environment for me. That wasn't an environment that helped me thrive. So I just kind of asked, can I see, or can you explain to me, is it an open office? Is it cubicles? I'm just curious. It's like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because we need to start seeing the employee relationship as a partnership. I have the skills, the experience, and the knowledge that you need to fill this role. And I'm going to do my best work, and then you're going to pay me, you're going to give me benefits. So it's a partnership. They don't own you. I know we still have this mindset, and this is, but we need to kind of little by little start changing that, right? Because it is a partnership. I have what you need. How can you make this work for both of us? So yeah, so drop in the chat, what do you need to thrive at work? Is there anything that you think you need right now to thrive at work? I know for me, as I mentioned, I don't thrive in open offices, because I have a hard time when I'm really concentrated. I really need my space, and I need to be doing my thing. Like people, I used to work in HR too. used to drop by my desk all the time, and I wouldn't be able to get anything done. So yeah, so what is something that you believe you need to thrive at work right now? If it's not the work environment, is it like a relationship? Is it, I don't know, a new manager or something along those lines? Let us know in the comments.
Yes, and I love your point of bringing in that it's a partnership between you and the employer. They don't owe you. I absolutely love that you said that. And great question. What do we need to thrive at work? And there's so many things that in my last position I didn't have that I need to thrive. I did have my own office, and that is one thing that I need absolutely, just like you. I need to have my own space, but I also need the ability to like focus on one thing. I'm not a multitasker. I get a lot of things done, but I focus on this, I focus on that, I focus on that. I'm not doing 10 things at once. And is probably any recruiter can relate, that's not the life of a recruiter. You're doing 10 things at once. You have your phone ringing, you have emails, you have interviews going on at the same time, you have to schedule candidates, you have to at the same time talk to different people, to managers, to candidates, to, and that was not for me. I like in an interview, I can do that. I can focus for those 1 hour on one person, that I enjoy. But any other times where I have to at the same time talk to 10 different people, not my role. So I need a quiet space where I can do my best work. And then the last alternative that I want to bring in as an alternative to quiet quitting is being in charge of your career, really being in the driver's seat and not in that passive roles of having quit and letting your career happen to you, but taking charge. And there's different places of your career where you can take charge. And I want to share my screen here again. So I already talked about the first one here. Step one, be really clear on your career goals. That is something that is in your hands. You are in charge of where you're taking your career. That is 100% in your power to figure out what do you really want to do. This is, and then be clear, like, okay, this is my career goal. I know what my strengths are. I know my skills. I know my interests. I know my values. I know all that. I figured it out, and this is what I want to do. That's the first part of being in charge. The second part that you have full control over is your personal brand. And I've been starting to talk more about a personal brand story because it really brings in of who you are, what makes you unique, but tying in as a story of how does your past tie into that, and how does that tie into your future? How do your past accomplishment back up what you naturally do so well, who you are, and how is that going to translate into what you want to be doing next? And again, you're 100% in charge of telling your story. You're in charge of your personal brand. You determine what you want to be known for, and you put that out into the world. Now, step three is you have to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is going to be key to your career success. And again, it's another part you're 100% in control of, because this is your platform to tell your personal brand story. You have your profile where you put out into the world what you want to be known for, who you are. You build your network. You are in charge of all of it. It's not a passive seat that you take there. You put yourself out there. You can even create your own content if that's what you like to do. I know it was a little bit of a hurdle for me to get over to start doing that, but it is a way to show the world what you want to be doing. So again, another part of your career that you're in full control of. The last part, your job search strategy. If setting boundaries and the other things we talked about is not working, and you are in a position where you need to get into a new role, you need to find a new career, you are also in charge of your job search. And I know so often we feel like this is a very passive process because we send out all these applications, and a lot of times we feel like no one's looking at them. They're just they're just rejected by a computer system, and that scans them for resumes, and it can again feel like very passive. But there are ways to be really active in your job search, and that really involves talking to people. I know it gets some of us out of our comfort zone, but LinkedIn is the place to go and build your network, build real relationship. Anna and I, we met through LinkedIn. That's what we did. We networked on LinkedIn, and like we built a beautiful friendship out of this. And that's the people you want to find on LinkedIn. The people who do what you wish you would be doing, who you can learn from, who can help you grow, who you can support each other. Real, not networking as of like asking others for a job or taking advantage of it. That's really not what it is. But building your tribe, like finding who you want to be, who you want to be, who you want to support, and who can support you to get to your career goals. That's another place where you can be really active in your job search. So all of these 4 steps will put you back into the driver's seat of your career. So again, that you're not sitting in the corner quietly quitting, but that you can actually go after what you really, really want to do. And oops, okay, this is not what I wanted to share here. Let me actually get out of this. And all of this and way more was what I covered in my workshop last Friday. So if you want to learn more about exactly what you can do to get into the driver's seat and be in charge of your career, you can head to my website. It's careerbloomcoaching.com. And when you click here on this button, the Frustrated to Fulfilled workshop is only available for one more day. So by tomorrow, it's going to be gone. It's a 1-hour free workshop that walks you through these 4 steps that I just shared with you, step by step, so that you can really find the career that makes you come alive and actually also make it happen. And if you want to dive into this a little bit further, here under my coaching tab is where I talk about my Frustrated to Fulfill program. In the Frustrated to Fulfill program is where I take my clients through getting clarity on what exactly they want to do, having that clarity, that certainty of like, yes, this is the career for me, this is what I want to do. And then the 4 steps that I just shared with you of how do we actually tell your story now? What is your personal brand? How do we utilize LinkedIn? And how are we going to be effective in your job search? So at the end, you will find that fulfilling and energizing career. All right, Anna. Is it time for questions? Let me actually stop my screen share here. If you have any questions at all, drop them into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you have any takeaways or if there's anything that you want to add here, Anna.
Yeah, we're happy to answer. And, if there's going to be more next week that we're going to share about work environments. So if this is something that I would say it should be a part of, why you seek a certain job, because what we wanted to do when we were younger, when we, were fresh out of high school, may not be what we want to do today, meaning we're not suited for that work environment anymore. Right. So if you need to be on call all the time and that doesn't suit you anymore. So come back next week at the same time. Our live event's going to be 30 minutes. It's not going to be 1 hour. So you're going to get great insights all about work environment, the physical, the company culture, and the working conditions. Right. So I don't see any questions here, but if you still have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to answer your question.
Absolutely. We appreciate you being here. Please make sure that you connect with us, that you follow us, and that you reach out to us with questions that you have. We really appreciate everyone tuning in, and we're super excited to be back again next Thursday where we're going to talk about working conditions.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.